Assalamu alaikum, hello and welcome. You're listening to Unity FM on 93.5 FM. My name is Shazia and you're joining me on the Nutrition Show. Really excited to have you all join me today for a discussion on health and well-being through nutrition. Before we dive in, I would like to remind listeners that all information shared on today's show is general in nature. For anyone with medical issues or concerns related to the topic of the day or otherwise, please be sure to seek medical advice from your own general practitioner. So today, I have the honour of being joined by a very special guest, a registered nutritionist and naturopath holding 2 postgraduate diplomas in Naturopathic Nutrition and Naturopathy. She herself has battled with several health conditions starting in her childhood. Having previously worked in the corporate industry in highly demanding roles for over 20 years, stress, anxiety, insomnia, panic attacks and phobias became and were part of her daily life. When these factors spiraled out of control, leading to additional physical and emotional disruptions to her well-being, including her gut health, she found some relief conventionally while seeking out alternatives to support her health back to normal from a natural perspective. In her own words, she considers food as medicine and guides and empowers her clients now to take control of their health through appropriate nutrition, tissue salts, back flowers, naturopathy, and other disciplines. She believes in the power of the individual to evolve and grow and become the best version of themselves. Now, that in itself is an incredible introduction. Hello and welcome, Mara Calvi.
Hi, thank you, Shazia. Thank you for inviting me to your show.
Oh, thank you. The pleasure's all mine to have you here today. Thank you so much for your time. We're really excited to have you join us. I have so much to ask you and I can't wait to get started. I had the honour of speaking to you recently about the amazing work that you do, Mara. In particular, the work that you do with gut health and managing clients with gallbladder issues, which really did kind of strike a bell for me. We're going to dive more into that shortly, but for the benefit of our listeners, would you mind sharing a little bit about your incredible journey to now, how you got to what you're doing, and the things that kind of stand out the most to you in terms of how you became the person you are today, please?
Thank you so much. So yes, as you mentioned earlier in my bio, I've been having issues for quite a while since I was born, and but really, what started my journey into nutrition and naturopathy was that years ago, I started to have really bad stomach and gallbladder problems. So I went to my GP, naturally, as you would do, and he diagnosed a few things that, they weren't quite nice. But so he gave me some medications, which was perfectly fine. The problem is I'm allergic to medicine, so I always take them sporadically with parsimony. So really what I would do if, instead of someone popping a tablet in, I would just cut it into pieces and try if I get allergies, side effects, etc. And naturally, I've been doing this all my life. And naturally, what I do, I also look at alternative, medicines or herbs, etc.
Sure.
Just to see if I could palliate the side effects of the medicines. So that's what I've been doing here when I started to have all these issues. And bit by bit, I realized that actually the gut is basically one of our most, important systems. And I realized the importance of it, and I decided to learn more and more about it. This is what got me really into becoming a naturopathic nutritionist and a naturopath. Yes, but as you mentioned before, I've been battling with issues for all my life, and I'm not coming from a family who uses alternative medicine, as an initial tool. So I had to learn everything, from scratch, if you will. And the more I learn, the more I love it. And this has got me into, my passion became, a way for me to help others.
Amazing. So what kind of issues were you experiencing yourself in terms of your gut health? Was there anything in particular, or was it kind of very general? How would you describe it?
So a bit of both. So I had initially a stomach ulcer, which
Wow.
turned to be several of them. And once that was somehow resolved or was getting into resolving, a gallbladder issue came up. So I had a very inflamed gallbladder, potential gallstones, etc., etc. So, you know, I had to go and do some scans. And yeah, so that's, you know, unfortunately, I tried the medicines that I was given and they weren't really matching with me. That was my thing. But prior to that, yeah, I've always had gut-related problems,
Okay.
intestinal issues mainly. And this would be, now I know, but back then I didn't know, this would be related to really stress, insomnia, and other issues that you mentioned initially.
Wow. And I guess a lot of people won't relate gut health to things like insomnia, will they, or stress? But actually, they're so closely interlinked. And when you look into the research, when you look at how your body responds to
Yeah.
all these factors, actually, your gut is one of the first places that are affected, aren't they?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
And you know, last year I published a book about probiotics,
Wow.
and that's because they are one of the key elements of our gut. And unfortunately, stress is one of the things that actually reduces good gut flora from our gut. So we
Wow.
really, everything is interlinked.
Absolutely.
As you say, it's very important to keep an eye on all these little items that, you know, we might think, oh, you know, they're not so important. Actually, they are.
Absolutely, and I think I equally agree with you there, because when I transitioned from a conventional role to a more naturopathic role, I couldn't understand how the body was all interlinked in this way, because as you know, in the conventional world, we tend to divide the body systems up and, you know,
Yes.
say, oh, the gut health unrelated to cardiac health, it's unrelated to immune health, but actually the body is a system that functions as a whole, and all these systems actually work together so closely, and there's this interplay between them that really we can't be separating these systems. Although, I mean, I guess from an understanding perspective, it does make it easier to kind of grasp principles, but really on the whole, it's about bringing it all together, isn't it, really? And looking at
Yes.
how we're needing to connect the dots, as they say, don't they? So,
That's absolutely true,
isn't it
connecting the
true?
dots. Yeah.
Yeah,
And, you know, we have this thing that, of course, when we are ill, when we suffer from something, we feel the symptoms and we don't want to feel the symptoms. So we want to remove them straight away.
yeah,
But really, the symptoms are there for us to tell us something, to tell us, hey, do you know what? I'm not feeling too well. Do something
exactly.
about it.
Yeah,
But what we tend to do is we just remove the symptoms, which is great because we should do that.
yeah,
But we forget about looking at what's causing the issue, the
exactly.
root cause of the problem. So
Absolutely.
yeah, it's a big job,
It is.
but it's you know, it's fascinating.
It's that amazing creation of our body, isn't it? The alarms
Yeah.
go off when something is wrong, telling you to do
Yes.
something about it, and
Yeah.
getting to the bottom of it, isn't it? So not just kind of treating the leaves, so to speak, you know, spraying the leaves when they're looking brown, getting to the root problem. You know, if
True.
it's a problem, get rid get rid
Yes.
of it.
And truly, who can say that they always listen to their body?
No, we don't. We're all guilty of that, aren't we?
We all,
We're all
yes.
guilty. Wow, that's amazing. Thank you, Mara. It's when I reach out to practitioners like yourself that I'm continually reminded about how important it is that we stay up to date with the new research and options to support our clients actually to the best of our ability, as this all becomes available, and also how essential it is for the safety and benefit and reassurance, I guess, in many ways, for our clients, that they seek out and work with only those practitioners who are appropriately trained and accredited with recognised qualifications. So, as I mentioned in the opening, you know, you've got 2 qualifications there that you're falling back on, and it's giving you that credibility to be able to now use the knowledge that you experience for yourself, and then learn through your education to now apply to other people's lives and make changes for them. So, I mean, how do you find that that's important, that people seek out, you know, appropriately trained practitioners when they're seeking out support? Or because I mean, we see a lot of people now just turning to people who are like, oh, I'm a naturopath, you know, come and see me. But really, where have they done their training? How have they got
Yes.
to where they are? And, you know, just because we use natural approaches, it doesn't mean that it's always safe.
Yes, I do see that being an issue for sure. Unfortunately, the word nutritionist or naturopath is not regulated. So, and that's what's causing issues. So, someone can call themselves a nutritionist when they've done a 6 months online course or where, and so really always check where these, your nutritionist, your naturopath has done their school, how many years, I've been to school for 4 years and
Wow.
I'm with a registering body as well. Check if they are, linked to a registering body and what their registering body is, it's important. It's important to have the best, possible protocol and the best possible outcome for a person. One of the things that a true, nutritionist, naturopath would do is they will also, work around a condition. Say, for example, that a person is on medication, etc. That's fine, and they will, certainly respect that, work around it, and even ask if necessary just to speak with the GP.
Absolutely.
Because they want to collaborate and make sure that you get the best possible for outcome for what you have.
Definitely, and I think that's a really key point you've touched on there. It's multidisciplinary working, isn't it? We never work on our own. It's always kind of working in conjunction with the plans that are already in place, and then sharing our plans with practitioners, with whether that's the GP or the specialist or whoever the client may be seeing. So absolutely, and I think it's something that we really always reiterate on this show, that the advice that we talk about, the knowledge that we share is there for learning reasons. So it's there for people to look into and say, oh wow, I never thought about that, let me go and look into that, and then to take that knowledge with them to their GP or their specialist or whoever they may be working with and say, look, I've read into this, what do you think about it? How can I utilize this alongside the advice that you've given me? And I think it's very much kind of that sharing, isn't it? It's that sharing between all of us as practitioners, as well as the patient and the client as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And also if we're talking about GP specialists, they don't have much time either, They have a 5 minutes, 10 minutes slot.
Exactly.
We take the time to look at the person holistically, and we might find things that we don't diagnose, but we might find things that might be interesting for the GP to know, as well as, and this is where you get to the best for your benefit. So it's absolutely important to understand that it's not one or the other. It's holistic, and holistic means that the medical world is also included.
Oh, I love that. That's a really good way to sum it up. It kind of helps us to really get the point across, doesn't it? So we're not here against anyone. We're working with you. No, we're on the same side.
Completely.
Amazing. Yeah. So I'm really looking forward to hearing more about how you work, Mara, as what you're doing is so crucial. You really are a minefield of knowledge, tapping into the various specialities that you work with. So I've mentioned these earlier on. I'd love to talk more about the gut aspect of health, if that's okay. So we see, if not in the majority of cases, most people presenting with some type of gut imbalance. Would you mind telling us, Mara, briefly, as it's a huge topic in and of itself, what common issues in respect to gut health specifically, or gut imbalance, I should say, you see often in your practice?
So one thing that I see is IBDs, which is irritable bowel disorder, and that groups ulcerative colitis, Crohn's disease, and diverticulitis.
Okay.
So mainly ulcerative colitis. That's quite involved. It's autoimmunity, etc. Another thing that clients come with is IBS. Everybody probably has heard of the word IBS, and it's irritable bowel syndrome. And this is really the people who, unfortunately, they were given that diagnosis because the doctors couldn't find anything else. So they don't really know what is the cause of, their ailment.
Sure.
And they're suffering a lot because there's an array of symptoms that they come with. And really, it's really difficult to understand what the root cause is. So there's a lot of investigation work. So I'm like a private investigator myself, delving into the world of trying to find what was the cause of this IBS.
Yes.
But it's really important for the the sufferer as well, to understand, okay, this is where it comes from. And to what we said before, stress is part of it. So, always never think that stress is just comes and goes just like that. But yeah, it does have a big impact.
Wow.
But one of the things that really comes into place a lot is gallbladder issues.
Okay.
So what I would say is that I support a lot people who have a gallbladder and liver issues, or who need gallbladder and liver support, very much so.
Amazing. Okay. And IBDs, as you mentioned, and IBS in particular, it's when, as you mentioned, when there's no other sort of particular issue that's been identified, then people get the diagnosis of IBS. And we know that that's related to things like SIBO and, the research from the naturopathic side of things. And I think that's another huge topic that we could perhaps talk about one day. But it's amazing that there are other explanations now as to why people do go down the road of IBS. And, it being such a random kind of, you feel like you've been kind of like, the good thing is, I guess, that there isn't any sort of, difficult situation there for you to manage. But then you've been given this side kind of diagnosis. They've ruled out the kind of the difficult, worrying side of things and giving you a side diagnosis in a way. And it's not kind of making you worry as much. But then, like you say, the symptoms still affect your day-to-day life, and you're still having to cope with that bloating or the constipation or the diarrhea or those intolerances or whatever you may be experiencing as a result. And it's affecting how you're going through your day-to-day life. So it's a big thing. And I think, I see that with my clients as well. And you can almost see someone who's come to you, even without a diagnosis, that they may potentially have something along those lines, because who isn't suffering from bloating, constipation, diarrhea, indigestion? It's like there's such common symptoms now, aren't they? So I totally understand. And I guess, seeing those symptoms so often, it makes sense that we need to understand gut health really well. And, it makes sense that we need to kind of have measures in place where we address gut health. So I know with my second client this year, she's come to me with symptoms related to her asthma, but she says, I want to work on my gut. And I'm like, that's very clever, because that's actually what I wanted to do anyway. So she's actually already made the link herself that, actually I want to sort my gut out. And I talked to her about how the gut and the lungs are connected. And again, it's like, it's not something that you could speak to on a daily basis about, because you're like, how are the two connected? They're completely separate in the body. So how can the lung be connected to the gut? And actually the gut is connected to so many body systems. The research is showing us these amazing links and what we can do then to try and modify these kind of areas of communication to benefit that client. So amazing. So before we chat more about the work you do in clinic, Mara, I'd like to emphasize to our listeners that our discussion today is for information purposes only and does not constitute medical advice in any way. So for anyone listening in to the show with any related condition or otherwise, please do speak to your own medical practitioner at your earliest opportunity. Of course, your personal safety and wellness is our primary concern. So we talked a little bit last time about the gallbladder health in particular, and I really enjoyed that. I just wondered, Mara, are you able to touch on some of the lifestyle choices and factors that are maybe making people more prone to developing gut health issues or imbalances? So are there things that we can pinpoint maybe in a particular client on a general perspective in terms of risk factors, do you think?
Yes, nutrition is key here. And it has to be understood that any food that contains a high level of fat will affect the gallbladder and the liver. So that has to be taken into consideration, and certainly have maybe, if someone is having a lot of fat, by that I mean the coconut oil, the coconut milk, etc., butter, then just try to refrain. If they do have a little issue, try to refrain on that for sure. Other things that can impact, gallbladder could be drinks, for example. Now, when we're talking about drink, we always think, directly to alcohol, but it's not just alcohol, of course. It's coffees and teas are drinks as well, and they do have an impact on the gallbladder.
Amazing.
So yeah, you know, how many times is, oh, how many coffees do you have per day? Oh, nothing, just five. Okay, just five. That's not bad, you know. Okay, oh, but I'm not having alcohol. Sure, but maybe we need to look at it in a different way as well.
Yeah.
So, of course, anything that it's processed food, sugary, like fizzy drinks, etc. You know, if you do have 5 cups of tea every day and you add 2 teaspoons of sugar in
To
each
each
cup,
one, yeah, adds up,
you know,
doesn't it?
that
Oh my God,
doesn't help either.
amazing.
Yes. And I would say just one last thing that I'm actually working on as well. It's okay, we talked about stress, of course, but emotions. Emotions is very
Wow.
important. So anything that is negative emotion is going to impact the body as a whole anyway, but certainly the liver and the gallbladder. Don't we associate usually liver with anger?
Yeah, yeah,
So
amazing.
there is something there that needs to be taken into consideration as well. So when I speak with a client, I always try to understand what are their emotions as well, and then how I can help them, you know, with naturopathic disciplines.
Wow, that's amazing because I mean, I spoke to my last guest about this as well, and the mental health side of things. We just underrate how much of an impact it has
Yeah.
on our day-to-day wellness and well, you know, and optimal functioning, so to speak. And I think the awareness is definitely increasing, but I think, you know, maybe people come to a nutritionist or a naturopath, maybe not sort of considering that as a you know, a big factor in why they're actually feeling unwell. And again, here, this is where multidisciplinary team working comes in, because we need to work with mental health teams to address, you know, particularly the those clients who are, you know, maybe, you know, in deeper need of support from a mental health perspective. So I'm really glad that you mentioned that, because it is underrated, and I think people do misunderstand or misjudge, I should say, how much of an impact it can have. So, you know, stress, as you mentioned, lifestyle, you know, sleep is a big one that people just kind of just, you know, like, oh yeah, I'm going to sleep 2 hours and I'm going to be like working a 10-hour shift and I'm fine.
I'll be fine. I'll be fine. But you're talking about shifts. The people who work night shifts are super impacted by that.
Wow.
You know, mental. Yes. So there are a lot of things that have to be taken into consideration. And yes, you're absolutely right. Mental health is key. Is absolutely key to this.
Amazing. I love that. Thank you for sharing that. It's super interesting, Mara. So as I touched on a short while ago, and it came up in our conversation, you know, now and previously, the gallbladder health is really interesting. And you know, you mentioned that you have people from a South Asian background, which is really interesting, you know, and seeing them with gallbladder issues. Now, we know that people who have an intact gallbladder may also have problems. But what we'll do today is focus on those perhaps who have had their gallbladder removed, because that's a bigger issue in and of itself. So it's a very interesting area in nutritional medicine, I think. And I mean, even when I was working in conventional medicine, it wasn't something that I learned a lot about. So my learning generally came from when I started to study nutrition. So we know that people are learning more about gallbladder sort of optimization in terms of its function, in terms of its usage and what it does in the body, in terms and then applying that to their health. And I think people are looking into these things, because we're seeing people buying supplements, aren't they, now to kind of enhance gallbladder function. Just for the kind of benefit of the viewers, Mara, would you mind telling us a little bit about what the gallbladder actually does in the body and why it is so important? What's its role?
Yes, and I think you're right. We should know the function of our organs so that we know how important they are and why we don't want them to be removed in the first place.
If you can at all help it,
if possible, of course. But yes, so gallbladder is like a storage box for a liquid that we call the bile. And this liquid is manufactured by the liver. The bile helps to break down any fatty food that we ingest. So it helps with our digestion. Without the bile, then we wouldn't be able to break down any fats that we absorb. So what happens is that when we start our digestion, the liver gets a signal and it says, okay, there's fats in there, so I better start, manufacture some bile. So what it does, it sends it straight into the small intestine. That's where this part of the digestion happens.
Okay.
But that's only a small part of it. Now, throughout the day, the liver produces a lot more of this bile, and it needs to store it somewhere. So it puts it in the gallbladder.
Wow.
And when needed, the gallbladder then releases it again into the small intestine for breaking down of the fats.
Sure.
Without the gallbladder, of course, we don't have that storage. And this is where it becomes even more important. So if we don't have a gallbladder, we really need to look after our liver.
Wow. So there's more than one organ involved here, isn't there? So it's not just the gallbladder, it's actually where the production of bile is, actually coming from as well. Wow,
Yeah.
amazing. So I know when I was teaching some key stage 3 science and I was trying to explain to my students what bile does in terms of its function and why it's so important, it was very much like the analogy that's used is that bile is like washing up liquid. So if you're trying to wash a plate that you've had a greasy meal on, just with water, that fat does not easily remove from that plate. So you've still got that greasiness on the plate, and you're there for it. And particularly in cold water, you're going to be there for a while, aren't you? And then so if you add the washing up liquid to the plate, and then you try to wash the fat off the plate, it breaks it down into tiny little particles. It makes it into what we call micelles, so into it sort of liquefies it to the point where you can now wash that fat off, and it breaks it down to the point where we can actually cleanse that plate. So in the same way, the breakage of fats in our body requires breaking down to that level so that we can then absorb them. And if we haven't got that bile, what's happening to that grease then? That grease that we're consuming, whether it's a healthy fat or an unhealthy fat, whatever it may be, what's happening to that fat then? Where is it going? Are we passing it out? Are we not absorbing any fat? How do we know we're not getting that fat being absorbed and benefiting from those fats? What happens?
Oh, it's really, this is it. It's really difficult. So we're going to start to have more and more issues. Now, let's not forget that the liver is one of the organs that works so much for us in terms of detoxification. So,
Sure.
it takes all the toxins, sends them out, and it can only do so much. If we cannot break down the fats in a certain way, then they're not going to be able to be absorbed, as you said, so we're not going to be able to get enough of the nutrients that we are eating, but also we'll probably end up having some intestinal issues as well along the way, and more gut problems.
Sure.
So, things that, obviously, everybody will get different things. We could also end up having fatty liver, additional cardiovascular problems.
Gosh.
So, certainly we don't want so much fat in our body, because we know that could cause issues also for our blood.
Amazing. And you wouldn't relate gallbladder to other, issues in the body. You certainly wouldn't relate it to liver disease or heart disease, which it's not kind of commonly associated. So, wow, I didn't realize that there was so much of a connection until I started studying this. So, and it's so important that people are aware because, like we say, we want to try and avoid surgery where we can. Obviously, where it's indicated, and your medical practitioner is obviously doing that for your best benefit and for your best need. But obviously where we can avoid surgery, then avoidance is always better. Prevention is always better than cure, isn't it? We want to kind of keep our bodies intact as much as we can and benefit from the organs that we have until obviously it becomes necessary to have them removed. So we want to kind of educate people about why this is important and what we need to be able to make sure we're doing with our day-to-day life, and how we look after ourselves so that we don't get ourselves to that stage, obviously, where we can prevent problems from arising. So we'll talk more about this because I think it's really important for people to understand maybe the factors that are involved in this and what they might experience a little bit in a little bit more detail. I'm sure what we've heard so far has been very informative for our listeners, and I'm sure it's going to resonate with very many. I know somebody recently who had surgery, and they're looking into now what they can do on and how they can, build their health now that the gallbladder is no longer there. And it's a huge area to look into. And I think people find themselves quite surprised, don't they, what they're going to experience afterwards as well. And, they ask the question about, do I need to go onto a particular diet? Do I need to then start avoiding certain foods? What do I need to do? So we'll talk more about this to kind of help people along. So we're going for a short break now. You're listening to Shazia, that's me, on the Nutrition Show on Unity FM, 93.5 FM, with our special guest, Mara Calvi. We'll be back after the break for more, so please stay tuned. Assalamu alaikum, welcome back to the Nutrition Show. You're joining me, Shazia, on Unity FM 93.5 FM with our special guest, Mara. We'll be diving into more pearls on gallbladder health shortly. Just a reminder though, before we dive back in, that our discussion is for information purposes only, so does not constitute medical advice. For anyone suffering with any related health condition or otherwise, please do speak with your own medical practitioner. Welcome back, Mara. It's great to have you on the show.
Hi again, Shazia.
Hiya. So, we're talking lots about gallbladder and how it's related to liver health and potentially other imbalances as well. So, amazing now that we know what the gallbladder is, so what its function is, and literally how it's kind of helping us in our day-to-day existence. It's such a relevant topic, and when we try to optimize the digestive health of our clients, surely we look at the gallbladder function, especially when we're finding symptoms or when we're finding pointers that there may be some compromise, when the gallbladder is intact, and obviously when the gallbladder is missing, that in and of itself is an obvious reason we need to look at their health. So we'll focus on those people who've had surgery purely due to the time we have today. So these people are the ones who have no gallbladder at all. Would you share with us, Mara, please, what you have found in respect to these clients in terms of the challenges that they may face in terms of their nutrition, what kind of fears they may have going forward, and the things that they may kind of want to look into in terms of what they want to kind of prevent further along their kind of nutritional journey.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's really important because obviously focusing on people who don't have that gallbladder anymore. So basically what happened, what I've noticed is that, of course, you need to have it removed for sure. But then when you go back, people might think that, okay, if they're going back to their normal life, how they used to eat before, then it's okay because now the gallbladder isn't an issue anymore. But actually, that's when you need to be even more careful now.
Yeah.
So in terms of nutrition, not having a gallbladder will prevent you from, digesting certain foods in a certain way. So the diet needs to be tweaked a little bit. Yes. So you will need to make some compromises. And what I would suggest that this happen is that by eating mainly or a lot of ingredients, items that are there to support the liver the most.
Wow.
Because you know that the gallbladder isn't there anymore, so the liver is the only one to do the job. So, it seems to be natural, not just to remove certain items, but also add items that actually are liver friendly.
Oh, wow. Absolutely.
And I'm thinking of what we call bitters. So there's a type of, a certain number of items, fruits and vegetables maybe that we call bitters.
Sure.
And these are the ones that are helping our liver the most.
Sure.
So for example, rocket, dandelion, beetroot, Jerusalem artichokes. So they are really, really favorable for your liver. So, it doesn't take much. Just get a little handful of these every day, just to support a little bit the liver.
So add some rocket to your salad, start looking at, would sort of lemons and things like that help as well? So lemon in water in the morning maybe, or what do you suggest in terms of kind of drinking fluids and things like that?
In terms of drinking fluids, I would probably go with a dandelion or fennel tea.
Sure. That's really easy to get now, isn't it? So
easy to get. Yeah. I mean, yes. Even in, like just normal tea already prepared, or just, get a few seeds, fennel seeds, put them in some, boiling water, leave it there for 20 minutes, remove them, and just start drinking that water.
Amazing.
And that's how we can support, straight away, like, tomorrow we can do it. You can do it tonight by just going out
Exactly.
and get some fennel seeds on dandelion.
Yeah.
It's as easy as that.
Absolutely. How amazing is that? So things that people can look into, make sure that it's, appropriate for themselves and start to, incorporate into their life. And I
Yeah.
guess, I mean, in terms of the fats, Mara, how would you, should people stop consuming fats, or how do they manage their diet from a fat perspective? So maybe for those people particularly who have a lot of fried stuff,
Yeah.
it's kind of common in their everyday day-to-day meal. How would they kind of make amendments, so to speak?
Yeah.
What would they be doing?
So for sure, everybody's different. So, but as a general point of view, fried food isn't going to help. So, we can restrict a few things, but we can find ways around to make food as tasty, but, a little bit, in a different way.
Sure.
For example, what I found out by mistake not long ago, actually, is that by oven, put in the oven a few Jerusalem artichokes that you would have, sliced with a tiny bit of olive oil. They would turn into what looks very much like a crisp, like a chips.
Oh, wow.
So that could be a way to, consume your Jerusalem artichokes. You're doing good to the liver, but in the same time, actually, there is something that is very similar to what would be a proper potato chips, but actually, you're not getting the starch, you're not getting the, the carbs from that. You're going to help your body, but then, you have the same taste or similar taste. And next to that, you could potentially have a nice little cod fillet, not buttered one, just a light fried it in a little bit of, olive oil. And that's it. You have your healthy fish and chips.
Amazing. And far more nutritious as well, isn't it?
And far more nutritious. Absolutely. So this is just a small idea, but and you can also choose beetroot, for example. Grate your beetroot, put
Amazing.
a bit of spices, and just light fry them. So what I do when I light fry things, I first put a little bit of oil just to fry it, the item a little bit, whether it's a mushroom or a beetroot. But after that, in order to cook it properly, I just I put some water in it. So I fried it tiny little bit with some oil, but then I continue the cooking with the water.
Oh, wow.
So there you
That's
are.
very clever. Yeah. And you don't need as much oil then, do you? So you're not tempted to add more, because I know I've seen it myself. People add more oil to their food because they think, oh, not enough there, is there? So let's add some more.
But that's what you're tempted to do. There you go, more and more.
Exactly.
So I mean, these are just little tips that people can do to make their food tasty, still enjoy the food, because ultimately food is what we do in, as a family.
Absolutely.
We come together, we eat food, we enjoy. All of us are doing this. Let's try to make it still good and, but healthy instead.
And utilize these healthier oils, isn't it? And avoid the processed oils, which are the problematic ones, aren't they, usually?
Yes, so olive oil, extra virgin olive oil and coconut oil are the best for frying. I'm not saying that you should put a lot of it,
small
a tiny bit of it, small amount, but they're the best because they keep up the temperature.
The high smoke point, isn't it, with the coconut oil? And also we want people to change their way of eating, so it's not always about frying. Why don't you steam your food?
Absolutely. Steaming, absolutely. Boiling, steaming. Steaming is the best because it keeps all the nutrients. But even boiling, if you don't have the time to steam, that's perfectly all right. Yes, absolutely. And what you can do if you don't have a gallbladder, one of the things that you can do is potentially maybe go towards I wouldn't say a vegetarian diet, but think about introducing maybe some pulses a little bit more than meat, as an example. There's nothing wrong with meat, but it's harder for the body to break down.
Amazing. That's a very important point, actually, isn't it? The meats tend to be harder for the body to digest. So we sort of tend to get people to start looking at more plants as an alternative. But not to totally exclude meats, because what do we say with meats? It's quality, isn't it? Quality over quantity. So when you're seeking out a meat, get something nice. Have it as a treat. Make it of the best quality that you can afford. that you can actually get hold of. But don't go to it as your everyday kind of,
No,
your
definitely
everyday food
not.
choice. Yeah.
Yeah. And don't forget that, I mean, I'm also one of the things that I include in my protocols is
Sure.
I always take into consideration the blood type of the person.
Wow. Amazing.
So, for example, a type O
Mm-hmm.
will have more capabilities to break down meat
Oh,
as
wow.
opposed to a type A because
Amazing.
they have more acidity in their stomach.
Oh, wow. I didn't know that.
So,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, so, also take that into consideration. If you know your blood type, for
Sure.
example, try to take that into consideration as well
Wow.
and see, okay, maybe instead of having meat, 4 times a week, let's just have it, once a week
Sure.
and have something of a quality, something that comes from a, place that etc. They even know the name of the cow. But at least you have something that is quality that you can break down
Sure.
and it's good for you.
Yeah, you don't want this, chemical laden foods when you can be going for quality
No.
over the quantity. And actually,
Yes.
it takes the stress. For me, I find it takes the stress away because my personal choice is not to eat a lot of meat.
Mm-hmm.
And, but when I do, I want it to be something nice, and I don't feel guilty spending that extra, say for an organic chicken, for example, because I know that I'm not going to eat it that often. I'm going to have it as a treat and I'm going to enjoy it when I have it. And I think that really does take the stress away from the cost side of things. So, that you don't have to be breaking the bank. You can do this from a sensible perspective in that you can, have foods that you enjoy on a, rarely, but, in its quality form rather than, going for the conventional produce every day when you're not really doing your body any good. So I was also thinking about how do you kind of find nuts and seeds? Mara, do you find that they're quite useful to add to your diet, perhaps because they're natural fats?
Yes, they are quite useful, especially
Yeah.
seeds. What I would
Okay.
do with those, I'll probably do an overnight oats
Okay.
with some seeds in there so that, it's already, it's already been, not processed, but it's already been there
Prepared,
for a
isn't
while
it?
prepared
Yeah.
and, it's more easier to the digestive system. Yes,
Sure.
absolutely. Seeds
Yeah.
are good. They're great. They're a great source of fat.
Yeah. Avocados, olives, those are all additional really quality, fats to include as well.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So,
definitely.
people can get fats in other ways. They don't have to necessarily fry foods or add fats to their
No.
food. They can get fats that way as well.
They can get fat that way.
Yeah.
Yes,
So,
absolutely. But
yeah.
one thing, that people can do is you mentioned avocado, say that you can smash it, you turn it into some kind of sauce, some kind of guacamole, and it can, you can mix it to a salad, for example.
Yeah.
So now you have your salad with your avocado that
Exactly.
is used as a sauce without you putting any oil or anything, or,
Yeah.
you already have the oily texture of the avocado in there.
Amazing. There's so much people can do. I think sometimes it's just about being educated about that, that these options are actually there. And I know when I started looking into nutrition, I would never have thought about fats coming from these sources like fatty fish, like avocados, like olives. And, these are fats in their natural state. We're not having to manipulate them. We're not having to do a lot with them. They're so tasty, in terms of adding them to salads, adding them to, like you mentioned about lightly pan frying some fish. It's such a good way to consume these fats and keep the food nutritious as well.
Yes.
So that's what you want to be doing. You want something that's great on the, on the taste buds as well as giving you the nutrients that you actually need, isn't it? It's kind of that finding that balance. That's amazing. So I know you've shared a couple of tips already, Mara. What would you say in terms of any other things that you might do from a holistic or naturopathic perspective to help these people? So we've talked a little bit about the food. What about from their lifestyle perspective? What would you kind of what do you find helpful for these kinds of clients?
Yes. I mean, in terms of a lifestyle, if they do have an hour to give here and there for themselves, that would be amazing because mindfulness is what's required for everybody, really, not just them. But I would certainly include a light yoga session.
Okay.
This isn't something that, you want to, start doing, like in a very very like
Strenuous.
sporty way, strenuous way.
Yeah.
It's just a light session here and there, which is going to help, the digestive system
Wow.
to, move on.
Sure.
But not only that, there is something else I wanted to mention is that a lot of gallbladder issues are also happening to women mainly.
Oh, wow.
And women, when they start to have their cycle changes. So when they have their hormonal changes, so between 40, in their 40s and their 50s, that's also because the body needs to expel high numbers of estrogen levels.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So in terms of that, this is where mindfulness come into place as well, because it's going to help these ladies, even if they don't have their gallbladder anymore, it's going to help these ladies to manage that part of, their life. So with light yoga, light Pilates exercises, very, very light. And again, I'm just going to say one of the other things is emotions, check your emotions. And I help them with back flowers myself.
Wow.
So I just listen to them, and from what they say to me, I just give them a mix of these back flowers. Now, back flowers are herbal. They're not medicine, they're essences.
Sure.
They come in a base of either alcohol or glycerin. So for the people who don't use alcohol, then they can use glycerin instead. And they are very effective. They are super effective. And they calm down because, like I said, the liver is the one that's going to work a lot. And the liver is where all our emotions are stored. When we are angry at someone or something, that's where you feel it.
Yeah.
And we need to make sure that we manage it properly.
Wow, that's like an additional, benefit there that people can, seek out because you have the training in that particular field. And I know, these remedies are very popular. I know when I used to work as a community pharmacist, we used to have a shelf area dedicated to back flower remedies, and they were selling all the time. So people are very much aware of these modalities to help support them. And I know, I have to say, I used to kind of use them as well for stress relief, and I found them quite beneficial actually. It's very useful as an additive to your everyday kind of means and measures to kind of control anxiety and stress, like you've mentioned with the Pilates and the yoga. We need to do these little things, make them part of our day-to-day life, and we've got to plan them in. As I say, if you don't plan something in, you're not going to do it. So that 5 minutes after breakfast or before breakfast, get a little yoga session in, or a Pilates session. Why can't you do it? You've got to do it. It's for your own benefit and for your well-being. And if you've got to make that investment. I always say to people, before we kind of procrastinate, we have to think about all the things that we're doing for our health, for our family's health, for those that we influence. It's about investment, isn't it? It's an investment for the future. It's an investment for us to be the best that we can be for as long as we can be, because, we want to be doing all these things. How are we going to do them if we're not looking after our body? How are we going to do it?
That's absolutely right. And you're right. We never think about ourselves really. How many people do, it's always about the others. Oh, I need to do this, I need to do that. But how difficult it is to even take 5 minutes just for us. It's absolutely terrifying. People don't do that. But you mentioned, take a few minutes, and that made me think. One of the things that I'm asking sometimes my clients to, if they can, because some can't. It's quite interesting. But before you start eating, why don't you just take 2 minutes to do a little bit of a breathing exercise?
Oh wow, yes,
calm
breathing
down. Breathing. It's kind of important.
How many of us actually breathe? Such a good question. Absolutely. And how many of us are just kind of like in this shallow breathing phase? And I do it.
Yes,
I
do it.
That belly breathing is just not there. And a number of times a family member says to me, just breathe. And I'm irritated, and he's like, just breathe. And I don't tell me to breathe. You're so stressed out that you're like, no, I can't. I don't even have time to breathe. But really, when we think about it, the damage that we're causing our bodies is so excessive. We have to kind of start thinking about these things, and it's about that kind of vision, isn't it? That our body is not a machine. It needs to be serviced for us to be able to do the things that we want it to do. I mean, how many of us have all these crazy plans to the end of our lives, and you know, we want to do this, and how are we going to do it if we're not looking after ourselves? So absolutely, I love that breathing. That's such an important thing.
Yes, and to be honest, sometimes I've been asking my clients to put a reminder on their phone, like breathe. Okay.
Oh, wow, that's amazing.
But you know, if we need to, let's use our phones for something important. You know, before your lunch, take 2 minutes, sit down. You know, don't have your lunch on the go. Sit on a table, take 2 minutes, breathe, and that's preparing the digestive system to, you know, to get the food in and to accept it and to absorb it better.
That's such an amazing tip. Thank you, Mara. That's, you know, it's so relevant. Honestly, we're stuck to our phones are like an extra limb now, aren't they? We have to have our phones with us. Or why not use it for our own benefit?
Yes.
Amazing. You know, I think we could talk about this all day. It's such an amazing topic, and it's been so incredibly useful speaking to you, Mara. And not to mention how relevant it actually is. If you had to sum up and share your top 3 takeaways, Mara, for people today listening in from a general perspective, so on general health, whether it be gallbladder health or gut health in and of itself, what would those be?
So I would say, look at your nutrition and, you know, maybe make a small list on what the items that you're eating, like during the week or during the day. See what items you might feel that they're not very good, and just check if they are actually essential to your life, to your well-being. And if not, you know, say for example that you come up, you know, you're eating 2 kilos of sugar per day, you know, see if it's essential, see if you can, you know, just maybe, you know, release them. I'm just thinking here to a general aspect, you know, it's a little bit to your point when you made your correlation with the children. Food is our fuel. We need it to create energy. But if you are giving bad fuel to your car, for example, or the wrong one, then the car, after a certain point, is going to stop working.
Absolutely.
So in the same way, our body, if you're not giving it the right food, the right, ingredients, then after a while, it's going to stop working. So just remember that, and just make a little list and look at what, you know, and see if there are any things. If you're eating too much processed food, just remove a few of those. That's one item that I would just give as a takeaway. Another thing is absolutely mindfulness. That is something that will always come back to me. Take the time for yourself to do something. If it's not one of the things that we suggested, if you like to do puzzles, do a puzzle.
Why not?
If you like to paint, just do a paint. Take the time to be with yourself and not always being on the go all the time.
Amazing.
And it's hard.
It is hard, definitely.
It's hard, yes, but that's important. And the third thing that I would do is just write a little journal with your emotions and see how you feel, see what makes you feel that way and why. And maybe by just putting those emotions on paper, maybe it's already going to help them to, you know, release you from them.
Wow, that's so powerful. Yeah, I used to keep a journal, a gratitude journal, and then it kind of like it fell by the wayside. But I need to resume. And I've often found that it actually made me think about things. I was like, you know, like especially when I was in complaining mode that day, and I thought, no, I've got to change this, because you find when you're complaining, your day just spirals more and more into a negative mindset, and you just don't recover from that to some, you know, when you get to a certain low, that recovery is so much harder. So I mean, I used to have an app, but you can have a notebook by the side of your bed, and you can just write 3 things that you're grateful for, that you want to just get off your chest, write them down, get them out of your head, and deal with them in the morning. So at least that way you get a night's sleep, that you're not having to kind of ruminate over those thoughts.
That's a good tip. Yes, absolutely. How to help your insomnia. Just write down what bothers you and just leave it on the side until tomorrow.
Because you can't do anything with it at that point in time. No. So why worry about it, right? It's going to be there in the morning.
That's true.
Leave it for the morning. Not to procrastinate, but leave it for the morning and then deal with it when you can allocate some time to it. And allocate time, I think that's another really key thing. Allocate time to particular activities, including your problems. You know, you give yourself an hour, I'm going to sort this problem out. If you can't sort it out in that hour, come back to it with your next allocation of time. Don't use it every day sorting out problems. And I know that's the advice I gave myself. So we've only just moved house and it's been absolutely horrific, despite trying to enjoy the move. And I think I've got to the stage where I'm like, okay, I'm going to allocate a time in the day to deal with house move issues. And then the rest of the day, I'm finding my normality. So
that's absolutely right. That's
you've got to do it. You've got to do it, haven't you, to keep your sanity and to keep yourself going, because you don't want to get yourself into a place where you're not able to then recover. No. So I think that's what I love so much about nutrition and naturopathy. It gives you that time and that space to kind of, you know, to kind of give you, to actually validate that you're a human being, that you need that recovery, you need that space. Switching off is okay. It's normal to step away from the hustle and bustle of life and realize that actually it's okay to go back a little bit and then to make progress again. And I think we're kind of harsh on ourselves, aren't we? We kind of expect so much out of, you know, our bodies, ourselves, our families. And, you know, sometimes it just kind of, it makes us go back rather than forward.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. It allows you to take a step back, a quick little step back to realize, okay, you know what, I'm not doing so bad. And it's good. Just to be yourself.
Exactly.
Just to be me.
Be yourself and love who you are.
Yes.
And you'll find you can make so much change just from that alone.
That's
wow,
true.
I'm blown away. Amazing speaking to you, Mara. I really appreciate the time you've taken to join us today, to share your pearls of wisdom. I can see so much knowledge is coming from the little time that we've had. And I'm sure that, you know, what people have heard today will be serving them. They'll be looking into things. They'll be questioning what we're talking about, you know, and no doubt it's going to serve so many people. So for everyone listening, I hope that what you've heard today has been useful and informative. I hope it's insightful and gets you looking into things for yourself, for your family, for those that you can influence as well. But remember that do this alongside your healthcare providers. It's not something for you to kind of navigate on your own. It can be quite complex. And remember, just because something is natural doesn't mean it's necessarily always safe and appropriate for you. Always seek out a qualified healthcare professional for advice. We talked about this at the beginning of the show. And always, you know, we'd love to hear your thoughts and feedback. You know, you can do that at any time by giving us a call. So you're joining me, Shazia, on Unity FM, 93.5 FM on the Nutrition Show. Amazing guest today was Mara Calvi. Please do follow her work. She does a lot of amazing things out there. Look out for her book on probiotics. Hopefully we'll get her on the show again to share some more pearls of wisdom. I'm really excited and looking forward to that. I'm grateful for another opportunity to connect with you. Take care until next time. Wassalamu alaikum.